what do you swear you saw but don't have any proof of? I saw a fox chasing a turkey on a hot summer day. They both tired out and stopped running at the same time and laid down to rest. Then they got up to continue the chase after about a minute. Some absolute cartoon nonsense that I swear happened, but I wouldn't believe me either. On the same vein, I once saw 3 fat as fuck wild turkeys cluck across our backyard in marching order, one right after the other. The kicker, it happened on Thanksgiving Day. About 5 to 6 years ago, I had a job delivering propane. One day I was in a very rural area dragging the hose down the remaining 75 or so feet of the driveway that was too narrow to back down. I kept hearing turkey sounds. As I got closer to the back of the house, and maybe about 25 or so feet behind the house, there was an old stone wall that was in the woods. It's New England, so the walls are everywhere. Anyway, I had a view for the side of a single file line of turkeys, probably about 30 or more walking through a path and hopping up onto and over the wall. It was wet snowing, and there was maybe 1/4 of an inch if that on the ground. Every single turkey that hopped down from the wall slipped and fell. Some landed on their asses, some fell forward on their faces, some on their sides, some onto each other. Then they'd get up and keep walking. It was that last time I ever left my phone in the truck while filling a tank. Sitting at the campsite, and a beaver walks out of the lake, like on its hind legs, and proceeds to walk like this through the campsite and into the woods like it's on its way to Pooh's house or whatever. Just strolling. I had a beaver do that while I was night fishing. Walked out of the water on its hind legs less than 6 feet from me. Dropped a load of mud on the sandbar. Turned around and walked back into the water. Paid no attention to me at all. He's got a long day at the beaver mines ahead of him. He can't stop for every bloke gawking at him make a living. Was living in Japan in a city called Miyazaki. Was watching TV around the Christmas season. Station was MRT, as was about 10 p.m. at night. There was a station ID break, and it ended with a full screen, large, typed message in English. Merry Christmas, f*** you. This was 1993. Hello there, I am living in Japan as well. There is a popular song called Merry Christmas, f*** you by Japanese artist Jet Boys. Maybe they were just copy-pasting that song title, or were playing that song during that TV show. A lion at my parents' house when I was a kid. My older brother saw it too. Coincidentally, a lion went missing from a zoo in Ohio around that time and was never found. My brother and I swore we saw it, but obviously had no proof. That winter, my parents found giant paw prints outside that definitely were not a dog, cat, coyote, etc. Years later, when I was a freshman in high school, my friend's mom was driving me home and swore she saw a lion run across the road my parents live on. She never even knew the story about me swearing there was a lion out there. She was so convinced that she immediately called the police. That was all the proof I needed to know I was never crazy and know what I saw as a kid. Edit. It was 2004 to 2006 or so when my brother and I saw it, so prior to the 2011 Zanesville, Ohio incident. The spotting by my mom's friend was around 2012. A comet or something explode into a giant green fireball when I was a kid. Edit. In no way did I think a throwaway comment before class would get this much attention. Seems like a lot of youths have seen bolides or aliens. Nice, I've seen one do that in a meteor shower once. Once, while my father was driving at night, we saw a small, nondescript shooting star just north of Sydney, Australia. The next morning, a neighbor told us she'd seen it straight out the kitchen windows that night over the sink while doing the dishes. Apparently, a tiny fraction of the meteorite landed and was recovered. This was in Australia. A corpse in a ditch on the side of the road. I was a kid. Told my parents as we drove by, and they got mad at me for having such a morbid imagination. Ooh, that's sad. An unsolved murder in the area I grew up in was discovered when some kids on a school bus saw her body in the ditch as they drove by. Thank goodness the bus driver believed them. I'm sorry your parents didn't believe you. That's some trauma. A Fruit of the Loom logo with a cornucopia back in 1994. I need to talk about this because I remember when I was a kid and those ads were running, I got a Thanksgiving vocabulary worksheet, and me and one other girl got Jolly Ranchers for being the only ones to spell cornucopia right. And the reason I remember this so vividly is because I then proceeded to walk around pointing out every cornucopia I saw for weeks to impress the adult masses. And I remember pointing out the fruit of the loom cornucopia to my neighbor like, "That's called a cornucopia, wanna know how to spell it?" I'm tired of being gaslit by big underwear. I had a whole elementary school arc about it. I am not losing my mind. Nirvana in concert in a freaking gym in Bellingham, Washington in 1992. My college friend swears during a night of bar hopping, we saw Nirvana in a dive skater bar in July 1889 in Carbondale, Illinois. It's an urban legend now, but my friend swears we were there and only a dozen or so people were there. I so wish I could remember that. I swear I saw a man walk backwards up a hill and disappear. He went out of my line of sight as he walked behind a tree and never came out the other side. I checked the tree and everything. It scared the crap out of me. This one oddly scared me those most. Very creepy. I've seen people just disappear in the woods too. I was on a hike by myself when the entire forest just went completely silent all at once, and the sounds of all the birds and anything else was just suddenly replaced by the sound of thousands of buzzing flies. That seemed like a bad sign at the time, so I just turned around and started walking back towards the start of the trail. I saw a guy wearing a blue t-shirt, gray/dark green cargo shorts, and a black watch walking towards me. White guy, medium to large build. Never caught his face. It was blocked by the trees. I'm already freaked out by the change in noise, so I stop where I'm at and wait for him to pass. He walks behind a tree, doesn't pass the tree, never reaches me. I walk where he was walking, nobody there. Still hear the sound of the flies buzzing around, but no flies in sight. Didn't see him in any direction, didn't see any footprints, never saw him as I was walking back. No clue where he went. Driving on a semi-rural road south of Salem, Oregon about 15 years ago, I swear I saw some cryptid-looking bipedal wolf thing. My girlfriend at the time was with me and we both saw it. Didn't really talk about it, just kinda accepted we saw something we couldn't explain. I worked in Medford back in 2008 to 2010. I was doing a little weekend trip with a girlfriend at the time. We were on the 20 between Corvallis and Newport. We both saw a bipedal wolf thing also. He must have been a good 6 feet tall. We saw him running across the highway at dusk. When we passed the spot he crossed, we looked up into the trees and saw something glaring from the trees. We drove our asses off the rest of the evening lol. Yeah, this was in the middle of the night, and it was crouched over something next to the road. Looked up, and our headlights made its eyes shine red at us. It stood up and went into the brush, and I couldn't see it in the rear view, 'cause it was so dark on that road. Glad I'm not the only one to see something like this in the area. Had some unexplainable moment when I was a child where I was playing a soccer game and was behind everyone. Suddenly my vision spun and I found myself in front of the goal with the soccer ball at my feet. I didn't feel sick or anything. Took the shot and made it. Here's a fun explanation. Your brain temporarily stopped recording things into long-term memory. Brains are weird and stuff like that can happen. So in the moment you were there doing your thing, but in your long-term memory there's a gap. And only when you look back at your long-term memory is there any problem. That's similar to how deja vu happens. Your brain accidentally deposits a memory straight into long-term instead of short-term. So you see something for the first time, but you feel like you've seen it before. At least that's what my high school psych teacher taught us 20 years ago. Honestly, I've experienced deja vu so often it's made me feel crazy, and this explanation is as plausible as any other. Honestly, I've experienced deja vu so often it's made me feel crazy, and this explanation is as... Wait a second. I was doing laundry, and after opening the door to take the clothes from the washer, a live grasshopper flew out and hit me in the chest. It scared the shit out of me because it was so unexpected. A grasshopper somehow got into my laundry, survived the entire wash cycle, and had enough life in him to jump out and hit me. I threw him back outside. I joke and say he's immortal. He's probably still out there somewhere. Thunder snow. In college, we had team workouts at 5:30 a.m. during the winter. When we emerged from our dorms, we were greeted by an absolutely insane lightning display combined with driving snow. The walk across campus was absolutely insane, like something from the day after tomorrow. When we finished the workout around 7, it had warmed up and had changed to rain, and everything had melted. There were 25 guys on the roster, and we all know what we saw, but none of our friends believed us. Sort of a stretch in the question, but when I was a little girl, I had a dream where I lived an entire life. The dream felt like a lifetime. I grew up, got married, had children, grew old with my husband, and I died. I still remember the peace of dying and thinking to myself that I was so happy and lucky for the blessed life I lived. As me and my husband get older, he starts to look and feel more like the man I grew old next to in my dream. I woke up right after I died, crying. I couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. A possessed house, or whatever, worked for the local utilities reading water meters while in school. Old-ass house. Was used as a makeshift hospital during the Civil War. Meter was all the way in the back, and they had apparently redid the basement, so there was new concrete walls, but the original stone foundation was still there. Sort of like a maze. Went in and read the meter, took a wrong turn, and got lost. Kinda panicked and got lost again. It was only a handful of walls because they wanted a game room and bar. Calmed down, found the meter again, followed the walls, and after a couple minutes, found the exit outside. Dude I was with asked what the hell happened and told him I got lost, but not a big deal. He asked how I got lost. Told him. The new walls. He asked what walls. Looked back inside and there wasn't any walls. Just a dark, big-ass basement. Apparently, I was in there for like an hour. He came in after catching up to get his lighter, never saw me, walked back out, and kept on reading meters for an hour before he saw me coming back out. He assumed I walked out upstairs and was talking to the guy who owned it, and he'd catch me at the end of the street. I know I saw walls. I know I got lost, and it sure as wasn't no hour. Edit. For those wondering, here's a link to the house on Zillow. The house was getting remodeled in the early 90s, and the owner sold it a few years later when he went bankrupt. It's changed hands, I think, multiple times according to some people I know who still live there. It's finally getting some attention to be remodeled. It belonged to a surgeon or doctor who bought it from a reverend who was rumored to be into some dark stuff. According to some newspaper clippings, the basement was used as a makeshift morgue, and the rooms upstairs were used as oars during the Civil War. Me and a buddy were laying on some playground equipment after a night of drinking when both of us at the same time go, "What's that?" There was a light up in the sky about twice as bright as the stars around it, staying still in the sky that we hadn't noticed before. Suddenly, it picks up speed, goes from directly overhead to over the horizon in about 5 seconds. A few times now, while stargazing, one of the stars will just zip right off somewhere. It's kind of funny, like, oh well, that wasn't a star, some kind of ape thing that ran out of a house, shook its butt and then ran back in a house. But the doors were closed, it never opened the door, just ran right through it both times. Crazy thing is, I was like 13, and my 12-year-old cousin was with me, and we still talk about it to this day. We saw the same exact thing. I'm 32, and he's 31. An absolutely colossal earthworm. It must have been 4 inches in diameter. I was just a kid, and was coming out of my front lawn. I panicked and stomped the ground to scare it away, and it worked. And every day I have regretted it since, because I have absolutely no proof of this giant monster living in my front yard. I saw an ivory-billed woodpecker in 1970, years after their supposed extinction date. I was in a small North Florida town built along a swampy river basin, where true believers still hope to find a remnant population. It was freaking huge, as big as our chickens. Folded wings that were white on the trailing edges. Ivory-colored bill. I know damn good and well that as of the early 1970s, there was at least one ivory bill in that area, but none of the ornithologists who are so eager to search in Arkansas are interested in that area. A monkey wearing a football helmet driving a Volvo wagon through my uncle's neighborhood at night in 1995. I was 6, but I know what I saw. A shadow person. I saw someone in my kitchen late at night who I thought was my father standing by the stove. It was dark, and I jumped when I saw his silhouette in the dark. I asked him what he was doing, standing in the kitchen in the middle of the night. He just stood in the dark, not moving. I told him it wasn't funny. It's fucking creepy. I flipped the light switch on. I was alone. Nobody there but me, shaking from terror. I couldn't see him clearly, but I saw someone with his shape in the dark. I talked to it. Nobody will ever believe I saw that. I know what happened that night. I talked to it for about 30 seconds. It stood 6 feet from me. P.S. Maybe I'm fucking crazy when I think about it. It's easier to convince me I hallucinated, had some sort of psychotic episode, or was seeing things instead of what really happened. Edit. I wasn't sleeping. It was late night, but I was on my computer in my room eating a snack at night. I went to wash my plate in the kitchen and saw someone standing at the stove. He was blocking the clock from the stove. I could see the shape because of the green glow of the clock. It was the only lighting in the kitchen. My son and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment when he was born, and we stayed there until he turned 4. When we moved, he told me, "I'm glad we got a new apartment. The shadow people in our old one scared me." I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me that when I would put him to bed and turn out the lights, he saw shadow people in our bedroom. He explained it so matter-of-factly it was chilling. It wasn't a child obviously making up a story. He was calm and without emotion. Like he was just reporting a simple fact. He is 15 now, and I bring it up ever so often, waiting for him to say he was kidding or lying. But every single time I ask him about it, he just bluntly says, "Yeah, in that first apartment bedroom. They were scary, but I never saw them again after we moved." My best friend died almost a decade ago now. I miss her. Without knowing it, I cooked her last dinner and said my last goodbye. I went home to get some sleep. At 2:01 a.m., I felt something wake me up. I opened my eyes, and for just a few seconds, I saw a gray, not black, blob-like one-dimensional shadow moving across the ceiling. The shadow wouldn't make any sense with the angles of the windows and the streetlights. I lived in that house for many years and never saw a shadow move like that. I had 2 perpendicular beams on my ceiling intersecting at the center of my ceiling. The shadow crossed over the 2 beams without hugging the vertical faces of the wood. It was as if the shadow was floating through the air like smoke. It wasn't smoke, as there was no smell, no candles in my room either, and then it was gone. Trying to figure out what I saw, it took me a while to fall back to sleep. The next morning, I got the call that my best friend died at 1:35 a.m., 26 minutes before something woke me up. To this day, I am convinced I saw her soul floating above me, somehow saying goodbye. I have no idea if I'm correct, but that's how I feel. I'm not a religious person. I believe in science, but I can't ignore that night's experience. I know science will figure it out one day. I miss you. I think about you every day. Faceless people. One standing under the light outside my grandparents' garage. When I asked my grandfather to look, nobody was there, and he said he never saw anyone. The second time, I was being kept out of my grandparents' living room, and when I accidentally walked in, one was lying on the sofa bed. When later asked about being kept out of the room, my grandmother denied it ever happened. Still a vivid set of memories from my childhood. No explanation. When I was kid, swear to God, I saw a giant bee. It was the size of a large parrot just flapping its large, transparent wings on a rock in my parents' backyard. I was with another kid, and he was nonplussed about it. "Yeah, it's a big bee, big deal," he told my mom while I was in shock, unable to articulate seeing this cryptid living amongst us. It was the strangest thing I have ever witnessed. To this day, I have no idea what it was. That I talked to my dead mother on the phone 3 weeks after she died. My mom passed away January 2021. I flew from Florida to Kansas City for the funeral with my husband and daughter. We attended the services, closed out her estate, returned home. About 3 weeks later, I'm lying in my bed and my phone rings. I was awake when the phone rang. I had been lying there debating getting out of bed or just lying there feeling sorry for myself, but I was wide awake. I sat up in my bed to look at my phone. I don't remember what the caller ID showed, but I answered. My mom had a very distinctive way of answering the phone when she was calling someone. "Well, hi there." Chuckle. "Did I wake you up?" That was exactly what she said. I just sat there holding the phone for a minute and then said, "Mom?" And then there was a click of a phone turning off. and the universe resetting itself. My mom was dead. I attended her funeral. I saw her in the casket. My mom also called me at some point after she died. Her phone was not in the possession of my brother, my aunt, or mom's boyfriend, the three people who were closest to her and would have received the phone. None of them would have played a joke like that. I'm not even sure where her phone went after she passed. I made some friends while working retail that enjoyed exploring abandoned buildings, and I went with them once. Massive industrial complex that was left to rot in the 80s after the work dried up in that sector. I got separated from the group in an upper part of the building and could barely see a thing. They insisted we go at night. I tried a few light switches and one actually turned on a light that had a red shaded bulb, which I found strange. Even stranger, there were several men standing in the room with me that I couldn't see until the light came on. At least 3, maybe more, standing adjacent to each other with strange clothes. One of them had a rifle in his hands, not a hunting rifle, a mil-spec type, and another was staring into my soul with his huge blue eyes. He said nothing, but placed his finger over his lips as if to shush me. After a second, he waved his hand to shoo me away. I quite literally fell down the stairs trying to get away and found my friends a few hallways away. I told them we weren't alone and that we had to leave. They saw the fear in my eyes and believed me. On the drive home, I told them what I saw, albeit I was a stammering mess, and they were flabbergasted. I told no one and dropped all those friends. Some nights I wonder about their identities and objective in that building. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.